Hey everybody, hope everyone is doing well. This is going to be a fairly short video, but I feel like it's something that I really want to talk about and just really share. And one of those, in the topic is more or less trading beliefs. And I saw a comment, really a couple of comments. So I'm going to kind of put them all into one category. And one of those comments was in regards to Trade With Me. And the question was more or less, is Trade With Me going to help? And if I was to sign up for it, what's the real benefit? Can it help me get to my goals? And the reason I want to bring it up is one of the things that holds people back. I've seen it. We've seen it with Systems Academy. We've seen it with trading, with any part of trading really, is beliefs. And one of it is I want to share something really quick for you. This right here, it's going to be a really short little lesson. But if you look at this topic right here, this is a slide from the bonus material that's going to be inside Trade With Me. So if you want to learn more about it, you can go to the link tradewithme.live and learn more about the program. But the reason why I wanted to show this is beliefs can take you hostage. And we always think of our technical beliefs. That's the first thing. It's, oh, if I learn more about breakouts, or if I learn more about second legs, or if I just understand more about how to characterize trend versus trading range, I'll stop making these mistakes. And that's very well true. The more you learn from the technical side, the more it's going to help you. But there's one issue that people overlook, and that is it's the lack of belief that they can actually figure it out. I'll give you an example. I've grown into running more and more, and there's a lake I'll run around, and the distance of the lake is roughly 9.5 to 10 miles. And when I started running that distance many, many years back, I remember, we'd start up here and I'd start running around the lake, and it has a lot of turns. And every time we'd be running, it'd be 5 miles, 6 miles, 7 miles, and I knew we were close. But one of the kind of demoralizing things was every time we'd go over a turn, I would think that we were almost to the finish line. And then I would go over the turn and I'd realize I would see the finish line way, way, way over here. And what's funny is now that I've run that same path, many, many times, now I know all the turns. And when I'm running it, it's easier. And the reason is because I know what's on the other side of that turn. I'm better prepared for it. And that's one of the reasons why Ali created Trade With Me. When Ali started, there's a long time ago, he actually emailed, it's a true story. He reached out to Al via email, and he simply said, Al, can I fly to California? Can I go into your trading office? And I just want to be a fly on the wall. He said, can I just sit in the corner? I'll be super quiet. You won't even hear me breathe. Can I just watch you trade? And Al said he wasn't comfortable with the idea. And the reason Ali was asking for that is the reason any of us would ask for it. For one, it's to be able to see the execution of a professional at work, be able to see the execution of trades, and it gives you confidence, but it's also getting to witness it firsthand. And one of the things I hear all the time, whether it's the Brooks trading course, whether it's Trade With Me, whether it's anything in quant systems, I see a common theme, and that is, if I do all this work, will I figure it out? Some of you might be, the reality is Trade With Me, it's not cheap. And some of you may be thinking, and I know this because I've had people ask the question, if I sign up for the Trade With Me program, is it going to benefit me? And, whether you can say, is that worth the cost? The point is it going to help? And one of the things I would ask you to think about is when you're studying with your trading, whether you're studying anything, whatever method you're studying, do you have full confidence that you can figure it out? Do you truly believe in the material? And the more you believe in a specific topic, let me just check the comments here. The more you believe in, and this is a live thing, I'll take a look at some of the comments in a few. But the more you believe in what it is that you're studying, the faster you're going to run. Same analogy. The more I run around that lake and I know where the turn is and I know where the finish line is, I'll run faster when I get closer to the finish line because I know the distance is closing. And that's one of our hopes with Trade With Me. Trade with me is going to give you, it's going to give you teaching, and you're going to learn price action concepts, but you're also going to learn, more importantly, the execution of concepts. And for some of you, probably the biggest thing you'll learn initially is confidence. One of the things one of the things that Ali saw in Orlando is there were people that came up to him saying that they've learned more in a couple of days than they have in months of their studying. And that's got nothing to do with what they were studying. The reason they probably learned more in that short period of time versus months is that being able to see it real time gave them the confidence to work and study harder. If you're not sure where the finish line is, you're going to slow down because you'll naturally slow your pace. And so, two of the things I just wanted to share really quick is when you think about your beliefs, there's really two types of beliefs. You have the psychological beliefs over here, and you also have technical. It's easy to think about the technical, you know, using rigid rules, thinking that many systems are required, or that you need something really, really fancy. If you've watched any of these live streams or really studied anything much about quant systems, you'll know that Ali talks a lot about breakouts and second legs. And we know that part. But one thing I invite you to think about is the actual psychological. And a big, big reason that people have issues from a psychological standpoint is not only they lack trust in what their system is, but they also lack belief that they can actually, even if they build a system, they lack belief that it's actually possible. It's simple as that. I've seen people in Systems Academy build a profitable system, but not be able to trade it. And part of the reason they couldn't trade it is they lacked belief that if they actually follow the system, it would work. They did all the documentation, they built it, but it took them years. It took them about a year and a half to really, once they had it built, it took them a year and a half to actually mentally get to the point where they said, hey, if I take all these trades and follow it, it'll work. And that's our hope with Trade With Me, is that it's going to give people the belief that it's actually possible. Let me take a look at a few of the questions. Doubt comes from not understanding how to trade or other reasons. Well, it's both. Doubt can come from many, many things. One of the doubts is time. Everyone always, one of the most costly things you can get with trading is the time it actually takes to learn it. Let's take a look at Trade With Me. Trade With Me, it's expensive. It's not very cheap. But one of the things to think about is that, will it save time? And so one of the biggest challenges or doubts that people have is, if I spend this much, if I start studying this specific thing, is it going to be worth it if I keep studying it for years and years? Because you can get back money, but you can't get back time. And so that is one of the biggest challenges. That's something you have to have. You have to have, the more belief you have in specifically what you're doing and why you're doing it, the better you're going to be. I've talked to people where they said, "Oh, I know I need to build a system," and these people aren't in Systems Academy. They're just people I've talked to on Discord, or they sent an email, and they said, "Oh, I know I need to build a trading plan or a system," but for whatever reason, they wouldn't do it. And part of that reason is they still have doubt that actually building a system is going to lead them down the road. There's doubt of, if I actually take the concept and back test it, it's going to actually work. Let me get a sip of water here. And Trade With Me is really no different. The reality is, you can go sign up today and feel great about signing up and feel like you're moving forward. But if you just study the course and you study it, you watch it passively, and you attend the events, you'll learn something for sure. However, if you don't do anything with the information, you're not going to learn that much. The reality is, you can take even the bonus material and Trade With Me. You can go to the breakouts, the videos that Ali created. And I think, if memory serves me right, there's 10 different examples of systems in there. However, you could take the idea, back test it, and prove it works, and implement it. But one of the things that people have doubt in is, if they actually take the time to back test and really study it, is it going to be worthwhile? And it's something you have to really, really be thinking about. I don't know much about the Al Brooks method as a whole, but I took Ali's 3 bar microchannel idea and made a trading plan with rules. Started live in mid January as of today. Not one red month. Thank you for Brad and Ali. Yeah, exactly. And you took an idea and you really ran with it, and you forced yourself to actually stick to that. And that's very, very good job. What's the difference between the Brooks trading course and Trade with Me execution? Well, price action is price action. And this is a common question. What's the difference between PTM, so Ali's Pro Trader Mentoring? What's the difference between Trade with Me? What's the difference between the Brooks trading course and all of that? The reality is, I think all of them are extremely important, but all of them play different roles. The I'm going to kind of lump together the Brooks trading course and Pro Trader Mentoring. They're the same price action concepts, but they're taught in a different way. Brooks trading course covers everything that I think a trader needs to know. It's kind of like it's that foundational level that's extremely important. How to trade, breakouts, micro channels, trading ranges, all the things that are really, really required to understand. Pro Trader Mentoring talks a lot more about breakouts and second legs, and it gets more into Ali's viewpoint on what about trading is most important. Al Brooks' trading course is that encyclopedia of trading. Pro Trader Mentoring talks about what mainly breakouts and second legs and many other things as well. And you can go to Quant Systems and learn more about what's in it. And you can also go to the Brooks trading course and learn what's in the Brooks trading course as well. Trade with Me is going to have the same price action principles, but have a much heavier focus on the execution of those price action principles. And therefore, let's say the first session, let's say it's going to be sometime in September. It's going to talk about a lot about the basic concepts, breakouts, and buy and sell zones. And we'll do a live stream here in a couple of days, and we'll show you a couple of slide examples as to what's going to be talked about. But we're going to discuss buy and sell zones in Trade with Me in the course, and then let's say trading breakouts and second legs, and then Ali on that day when the live trading event is going to trade that same style of breakouts and second legs. And then every month it's going to build one on top of the other. So while price action, to answer your question in a very simple way, price action is price action. And therefore, the concepts are going to be similar. Quant Systems or Ali is going to talk a lot about first principles and things that really drive the market or kind of that foundational level, which many of you have heard if you've been in Quant Systems. Trade with Me is going to cover a lot more of the executional side. And by the way, there's been another question while it's on my mind. The Trade with Me series, it's going to be one live trading day a month, and it's going to be a full trading day. So Ali will probably do a brief pre-market discussion, followed by a full trading day, a short Q&A at the end, and then maybe the following day or the day after, we will host a full Q&A, a 2-hour Q&A session, maybe a little longer. And James and I will answer a lot of questions that following day. Let's go back to some of the doubts. I'm afraid to become successful in trading. My brain likes to put more time learning than live trading. Well, that's actually important. The reality is there's one kind of false belief, and that's screen time. And for those of you that have not had a chance to, if you have not seen the most recent interview that Ali and that Faisal posted of the 3-hour interview with Ali, maybe one of you can post in the comments a link to that interview. So if you go to 10,000 Trades, which is Faisal's channel, I'll see if I can pull it up here in just a few minutes. I'll see if I can find it. I'll post a link at the end of this. But to save time, one of the things Ali discusses in that interview is that chart trading, let me back up. So let's recover the question. One of the false beliefs is that you need a lot of screen time. And screen time is helpful. It will help you understand kind of your emotions and where they're at. But the reality is it's kind of like, as Ali would say, it's like reinventing a wheel. And therefore, what's more effective is understanding the foundational concepts. In other words, you can trade live until you figure it out. And that's Eventually, one day you will figure it out, or that's reinventing the wheel, or you can take an idea, breakouts and second legs. Plenty of people, I've had people, some of the best people I've had in Systems Academy have, interestingly enough, they had the shortest period of time trading than others. They barely finished the Brooks trading course, and they just spent a ton of time studying and a ton of time. All they did is they reviewed the white paper over and over and over of Ali's. And many of you know what the breakout white paper is. It's actually one of the bonus materials in the Trade With Me program. But all they did was study that. And all they did was focus on breakouts and second legs. And what was interesting is by only studying that one thing and hyper focusing on that one specific thing, they were able to do really, really well. Now, the reality is, there's a fear base, to your question, I'm afraid to become successful in trading. My brain likes to put more time learning than live trading. Well, there's two things with that. One, I think it's great that you're learning. That's always important. But number two is you probably don't have a system that you fully believe actually works. And that's a big, big issue. The reality is you can take, Trade With Me is not designed for someone to just watch the live trading day and trade alongside with Ali. Really not recommended. The best thing someone could do with Trade With Me, they take the information and the knowledge, they truly study it, they learn it, they write it all out, they do whatever they have to do to learn the information in the course. They go to the live trading session and they see the execution at play. They take a concept that Ali talks about and they actually do a really deep dive in basically what we call in Systems Academy, they do a level 2 study of the market behavior of that specific system. And they really understand the ins and outs. And then once they understand the ins and outs, everything from how deep the average pullback, what's the immediate follow through, all those things, they understand it so well, they know how to put the system in play. And so a lot of times when people have a fear of trading, they don't really understand the idea that they're trading. Let me just take a look at a few more questions here. Here's a good one. My doubt in my first breakout system is the life cycle of the trade. It takes up to 6 to 12 bars for the trade to work. I feel anxious while holding the trade for that long while not having a stop order. Well, I think you mean why not having a stop, and that's pretty dangerous. The reality is you should always have a stop in the market. But if you're nervous and anxious about the trade working, that makes me think that you really lack the understanding in the specific trade itself. And therefore, I would encourage you to spend more time looking at the idea. Let me just pull up something really quick here. For those of you that want, let's see, what's the best way to do this? Let it load really quick. There we go. So those of you that are interested in that 3-hour interview I mentioned, you can go to 10,000 Trades. That's Faisal's channel. Many of you know. And if you just go to his videos, it's right here, how to think like a professional trader. Let me just share the link right here. That's the link. But anyways, for those of you that want more information, here's the Trade With Me page. Again, it's Trade With Me. You can read a little bit about it. This is the overall course modules. And by the way, the first module, it's probably going to have, I forget, it's maybe 110, 120 slides. Module 2, so this is basic concepts. Module 2 is going to have closer to maybe 280 or 300 slides of material. And therefore, it's going to be very, very dense. And you can see every piece builds upon each other all the way down. Now, this is what I really want to talk about for a brief second, and that is what is expected. Just because you join Trade With Me, and I know there's going to be people that do this and it's going to be unfortunate. And the reality is, you can join the program and you can feel really good about signing up. Here's what I'd really encourage you to think about. And if you're on the fence with joining Trade With Me, I want to encourage you to think about it more as well. The reality is, the expectation is that you prepare. And what does prepare mean? Yes, it means watching the video course. But the reality is, this is what I see. When I think prepare, I think about the bottom one. Let me try and zoom in a little bit just so it's easier to see. Too much there. There we go. Study the videos, pause, think, and take notes. I have a student in Systems Academy who, interestingly, he joined the latest among the group. And what I find fascinating about the individual is how much time he actually spends taking notes. He'll watch the recording of a Systems Academy class session, which is about 3 hours. And he said it'll spend about 6 hours taking notes. So for 1 minute of video time in the recording, it takes him 2 minutes of writing time. He does the same thing with PTM. For a 3 hour recording of PTM, he's got about 6 hours worth of time taking notes. And what's fascinating is he actually has notes on all of the students in our class with their system ideas. And the whole point behind me sharing that is, this individual, he studies, pauses, thinks, take notes, and reviews. And he can actually, I've had conversations with him. He will actually recall things I've said, 4 weeks ago that I completely forgot I said, just from his notebooks. And so that is the expectation. The reality is, Trade With Me, is the program going to help you? Yes, any program will help you. If you study the Bricks Trading course, it's going to help you. If you study the Pro Trader Mentoring, it's going to help you. But the real question is what you do with the information. And so you're expected to prepare. You're expected to look at charts and try to identify and explain the concepts that you're discussing. And you're expected to participate. The reality is, the best thing you can do is watch it live. And if you can't watch it live, you can still get something out of it. Watch the recordings, but don't go through it once. It's kind of like when back in the day, I spent a lot of time in the Brooks trading room. And one of the things I would do is, I found it very interesting. I was fortunate enough where I could watch Al trade live for the entire day back many, many years back. I'd watch him from my time, which was 8:30, and it was 6:30 his time. I'd watch from 8:30 to 3:30, and I could watch every bar. And what was fascinating to me is, I'd go on a Saturday and I'd watch the recording again. What fascinated me is how much information I either didn't pick up on, or I forgot, or I just completely missed by just studying the recording. And then finally, the last piece is engage. And that's pretty self-explanatory. Is Trade With Me going to mainly discuss market concepts? Well, sure. Of course, it's going to discuss market concepts. Trading is always going to have the same fundamental price structures. It's going to always have the same first principles at play. So the market concepts are always going to be there. The big thing that Trade With Me is going to focus on is the execution of those market concepts. And that's leads to the next question people often ask is, well, what's the difference between PTM and Trade With Me? Well, the reality is, from a knowledge standpoint, you're going to have the same pieces of knowledge, because price action is price action. One of the big differences, though, is with the PTM, Pro Trader Mentoring. And if you don't know what that is, you can go to the Quant Systems website and you can find more about it. But Pro Trader Mentoring is much more of a classroom environment where concepts are being taught, and it's driven based on the students' questions. So it's a Zoom call, and they can basically just ask a question, just turn off their mic and ask a question. And that's great, because it allows a lot of feedback and people can ask questions. The one challenge is it steers the course of the discussion, and therefore it takes a much longer time for discussions to be had. And the difference with Trade With Me is, because it's going to be a 6-hour recording, Ali is creating the slides, James and I are recording the slides, there's a framework. And so just like if I go back over here, because these are going to be actual recordings where there's no interruption in the recordings, you can cover a lot more ground in a shorter period of time. And that's really one of the big motivations behind Trade With Me. is we can cover 120 slides on these topics and give lots of examples. And therefore, in 3 hours, we can cover a lot of ground. If there's 250, 300 slides here, we could spend, however many hours it takes, whether it's 12 hours, 13 hours on this one topic here and cover, two, 300, really closer to 300 slides. And that's a lot of information over a period of time. So that's one of the that's one of the big differences behind the trading concepts. Mm, Whoops, let me see here. The mouse is not working. So most people want shortcuts, but not put in the work in systems and in their mind. Yeah, that's exactly right. Most people want shortcuts. And the reality is, trading's hard. There's never going to be a shortcut. And then, yeah, I totally agree with you. Most people are going to, again, you said it best just a second ago, they're going to take shortcuts. PTM libraries help me understand BTC way better, and there's a lot of specialized price action concepts. Yeah, again, I still encourage anyone. I think the first foundational thing you can do is really, really watch the Brooks Trading course and really, really understand it, because it gives you that solid foundation of understanding, so you can better expand on things like PTM or things like Trade with Me. So you're absolutely right. So anyways, I said this would be 10 to 15 minutes, and now it's been 30 minutes. If you want more information, you know where the link is. Just go to the tradewithme.live. You can study about it, or you can go to the Quant Systems channel, learn more about it. And at the end of the day, I think the biggest hope I'd really leave you with is beliefs. Number one, there's no guarantees, and you might spend 20 years trying to figure this thing out. And with that, I think you have to really decide. One of my favorite, I'm going to kind of steal something from Al, and this was the Day Trading Insights course that Richard and Al did. So if you go to I think it's daytradinginsights.com. If you go to that course, it's like a $50 course. There's an interview in there where it's kind of a back and forth. Richard would have asked a question, and then he'd give it to Al, and Al would answer it. And Al said, what do you, Richard said, Al, what's one of the most important traits that a trader needs to have? And Al said, one of the biggest traits that a trader has to have is persistence, the persistence to keep following through with an action. And what I would add with that is you have to have persistence and belief that it's possible. And one of my favorite stories of Al Lee, he shares this in PTM all the time. He shared it in Orlando, is in his in his journey of studying trading and learning how to trade, he took a step away from his consulting role, and he would spend however many hours, 14 hours, 15 hours a day, maybe more than that, in his office learning to trade. And his wife came in one day and said, in the very kindest way possible, hey, I know you're working really hard. How much longer do you think it'll take? And Allie's famous response that many of you have heard is, it's going to take as long as it's going to take. I don't know. And the whole point with sharing that is Allie's response was, I'm going to keep doing this until I figure it out. And so his persistence and belief was to the level where he knew that it was possible. And so for some of you that are on this journey, you're really interested in trading, you want to learn how to figure it out, and you want to get there, but you struggle with the belief of if it's actually possible to figure it out. And there's a level of, if your belief gets too low, you'll quit. And so that's one of the things I'd ask you. And going back to that Day Trading Insights course, that interview in the very first part of the course, there's I think it was a final question that Richard asked Al, and he said, it had something to do with, I can't remember exactly what the question was, but Al's answer was, you know, there's many ways to have a great career. There's many things you can do. And trading might not be the answer for you. And if you're sitting here and you're thinking about, should I join Trade with Me? Should whatever that next step is. I think Trade with Me is a great next step. But the reality is, you first have to ask yourself is, do I actually want to figure out trading? Is trading something that I'm truly fascinated in, or is this just something that I hope I can do really well in financially? Because there's a difference. I think the traders that I've seen do really, really, really well down the course of time have been the ones where obviously they were motivated financially, but something shifted. I remember this was 2022. It was actually the first day I ever got to meet Al in person. And we were at Orlando, and there was about 15 of us downstairs eating breakfast. So if you've been to Orlando, you know where that little breakfast nook is with the overpriced buffet. I remember that because it's like the buffet last year was like $30 for like an omelet, which is ridiculous. But needless to say, we were sitting down there, and Al taught he was we were talking, and he talked about this bar that happened on the prior trading day. So this was a Tuesday, and he talked about the prior day on a Monday. And he mentioned how I don't remember the bar, but it was, I'll try and find the chart someday and share it. But I think it was like bar 9, so one of those report bars. And he talks about how in 10 seconds price went up 4 points, something really fast. And so he said he immediately knew that that breakout, because it was so fast on like it happened so quick, he knew that he could place a limit order on the market, maybe a couple ticks below, and he could make a 1 or 2 point scalp. And he talked about this duration of 10 seconds to all of us for about 10 minutes. And I thought that's what was really cool about that is an individual who has an obsession of price action. And they were so fascinated about something that happened maybe 10, 20 seconds of the market out of 81 bars. They were just so fascinated with it. So the reality is, the last thing I want to leave you with is make sure that trading is actually something you want to do, because it's a fun thing. It's a fun idea. Golf, golf is interesting, and I'm not a big golfer, so it's kind of a bad example. But just because I might find golf interesting doesn't mean that I should have a dream to make it to the PGA and win a Masters. Because the reality is, I would never put in the work to actually make it, and therefore, you really have to ask yourself: are you willing to put in the work to get there? And for some of you, you're hard workers. You are willing to put in the work to get there. However, your beliefs are holding you back. And so again, just the last little, I know I keep saying last thing, but I really just want to make this clear. Go back to our slide here. Do you have one or two of these beliefs? Do you have a psychological belief that might be holding you back? Or do you have a technical belief? Some sort of belief where you have a lack of understanding of risk, or trading without any rules is the way you trade. Just really, really think through that. Mark Douglas, he talked about how I think it's Mark Douglas. Again, I'm not a huge psychology person. I really like Andrew Miniker, and many of you, I've talked about him. He's the guy that talks about the trade types and many, many other things. But I think it was Douglas, Trading Wizards, which I'll admit I've only read like maybe a chapter of that book. But I think it was Trading Wizards or Mark Douglas, one of those. I think he actually wrote Trading Wizards or Trading in the Zone. But he made a comment about how one of the biggest challenges with trading is that you're totally free. It's good and bad. You're totally free to do whatever you want. And because of that, your freedom is what cost you the chance of being successful. And so for some of you, you have too much freedom, and you need rules and you need boundaries to make you successful. One of the, I keep talking about favorite quotes because they keep coming to mind as I'm talking here. But one of my other favorite quotes, I guess from 2024, last year's Orlando, Al made a comment. He said, if you think about it, we're all really one trade away from bankruptcy. And I thought it was kind of a funny comment coming from him, but he's really serious about it. And what he was talking about is that he showed an example of like a bull trend day, and this really big bar crossing the moving average, closing down on its low. And Al made the comment. He said, whenever I see a big bar closing on its low below the moving average, especially if it has follow through, I'm getting out of the trade. And he said, I don't care if I exit the trade at the bottom of the pullback and it reverses up, I'll buy again. But he said, I'm always going to get out. And he said the reason for that is, he just said what I just said earlier, is because all it takes is one time in denial. It takes one flash crash. You just keep buying and scaling and lower to be at zero. And that's why you need systems. And so for some of you, you haven't thought much about the systems or just system design or implementing rule-based discretionary trading, I would highly suggest take a look at it. So, anyways, hope you enjoyed this. If you want to learn more about Trade with Me, just click the link. If you have any questions, ask them in the comments because I want to start making more live streams. And therefore, if you have questions, make them in the comments of this video and I'll take a look at them. And if I think they're helpful, I'll answer it or maybe even make an entire video about it in the future. All right. Hope everyone has, well, here it's a good night. So hope everyone has a good night.